Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Laurie, and I'm so excited to be joined today by Dr. Kiki Fehling, who is all over Instagram. You've probably seen them before. But before we get started with our conversation, I just wanted to thank our new Patreon supporters, Becca, Michelle, and Jordan. Thank you all so much for your support. It helps keep this podcast going. If you have not looked at our Patreon yet, please do so. It is in the show notes, and you'll find it on Instagram and all that stuff. Just for small monthly donations, you can help support the show, keep it going, keep the peer support going, and also get a bunch of bonus content. So thank you all so much to Becca, Michelle, and Jordan. Okay, Kiki, is it okay if I call you Kiki instead of Dr. Fehling? Okay, I figured, but I just sometimes people are weird. It is so nice to finally meet you. I have been following you for a while now, and I actually bought, so you have, I should put the lid on this. I have your DBT cards, and I bought this on the pre-order such a long time ago because I was so excited about them, and I'm always looking for new ways to teach DBT skills that aren't, here's a workbook that has no images, and it's written in 1996 or whatever. Because, you know, there's some things where, like, love Marshall and Hen, obviously, huge fan, hero of mine, but it's like, oh, like, you know, use your cassette player to, and you're like, if you gave that to an 18-year-old, they'd be like, literally, what is a cassette player? So,
yeah, they would check out of the entire handout. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm super happy that there's this resource, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about it in your book as well. But do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this DBT space? And yeah, just who are you?
Yeah. So I'm so happy to be here. Fan of yours as well, of course. And so I am a licensed psychologist in the United States, and I am a DBT Linehan board certified therapist. And so I've been practicing DBT, comprehensive DBT, for years throughout all of my graduate school program. That being said, I'm not currently seeing clients. And part of that is because I've started shifting towards trying to get DBT or DBT skills in more people's view and in their hands through these cards and my workbook and through videos online. I really love the work I did as a therapist. DBT is a life-saving therapy, as I'm sure most of your listeners know. And it's not as available as we wish it was. So I have really started turning my career towards writing, content creation, speaking, that kind of area about DBT, BPD, borderline personality disorder, and other areas of expertise for myself. Yeah, I mean, there's so much in that I could talk about, but that's where I'm at these days, at least.
Amazing. Yeah. And the accessibility feature of it is like so difficult, especially for the comprehensive DBT. For people that don't know what the comprehensive DBT is, or dialectical behavior therapy, you just always try and say the acronym one time without the acronym. Do you want to just kind of explain what that looks like from a therapist's perspective as well as the client's perspective?
Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that. So dialectical behavior therapy is a therapy that was created for borderline personality disorder, or BPD, but has since been shown to be really effective and helpful for a lot of people. But that original therapy, as it was studied for DBT, is what we normally call comprehensive DBT. And comprehensive DBT is a 4-part therapy. So there's individual therapy, the way that most people are used to it, kind of one-on-one with a therapist once per week, although DBT has some special things about it that make it DBT compared to other talk therapy. But you have that individual therapy, part 1. Part 2 is a weekly DBT skills group. So it differs clinic to clinic, but the idea is once a week for an hour and a half to 2 hours, you'll meet with a group of people in DBT and learn all of the DBT skills. This is dozens of different types of DBT skills, coping skills in the areas of emotion regulation, distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and mindfulness. So that's part 2. Part 3 of comprehensive DBT is phone coaching. So 24/7, 365, you have the availability to call your therapist for help. This is for crisis help, like when you're in the middle of the night feeling suicidal or just overwhelmed and want to use your skills. Your therapist can help with that. But it's also useful for just learning these skills in general. I think about it like I played soccer growing up, and the coach is there in practice. The coach is there during the games, yelling at you from the sidelines. And phone coaching is kind of like that. How can you learn or how can you take the things you're learning in therapy and use them in your real life? That's what phone coaching is helpful for. And then finally, part 4 of comprehensive DBT is just for the DBT therapist. So DBT therapists, in order to provide evidence-based DBT, should be meeting once per week with other DBT therapists, talking about their cases and making sure that they're providing effective DBT. So those are the 4 parts of comprehensive.
Yeah, and I don't know about in the States. I mean, I've heard obviously stories of lots of people that have accessed it or haven't been able to access it. But in Canada, which is where I am, it's really hard to access comprehensive DBT unless you have buttloads of cash and can just pay out of pocket. And so when I took it, I've been practicing DBT for like 10 years. I did it through like the public health system. And so mine was just skills. And so to me, it's funny, like I know comprehensive DBT, especially as like a licensed provider, it's really important for them to like do the comprehensive platform. But I also feel like for me, the skills alone changed my life, right? Like it's, and that's the part that could be so much more accessible, which is why I love what you do so much.
Yes, 100%. So I have not been in comprehensive DBT as a patient, as a client. I've only provided DBT, but the DBT skills themselves have been personally life-changing for my clients, of course, but then they've also been really helpful for a number of my clients outside of comprehensive DBT, like you're saying. And to be clear, there is some research, it's a little bit limited, but there's some research that shows that the DBT skills group might be the most important part of comprehensive DBT's effectiveness. And what has been shown more frequently is DBT skills groups alone, not with all the 4 parts, can be very helpful for folks with a variety of mental health struggles. Substance use, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, probably more than that, but they're really, really helpful for anyone who feels like they struggle with emotions or super feelers, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody in the universe also should learn these skills, right? Like, I mean, obviously it's people like me who live with borderline or a super feeler or just anyone with sensitive emotions, but also just like, these are life skills. These should be taught in school. Yep. From kindergarten on.
Yep, 100%. And some people are trying to do that, but absolutely. Yeah. These are the things that my clients are always like, why did no one teach me this? And usually it's because their parents didn't learn either because we're not taught this as a society. So yeah, 100% life skills.
Totally. And so you got into dialectical behavior therapy, like your interest in dialectical behavior therapy came from some personal experience with it, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about like what brought you to this space at all?
Yeah. So I found DBT when I decided that I wanted to go to clinical psych grad school and become a psychologist generally. And I found it because I was interested in when you go to a PhD program in clinical psych, you often have to specialize in a really specific like research area. And I was interested in specializing in suicide and self-harm. And when I looked into the research and the clinical work about what helps folks struggling with self-harm, DBT is it. And I was interested in that because I have personally struggled with self-harm in my past. Mm-hmm. I had friends who struggle with self-harm, and I had a friend die of suicide when I was young. And I have just been really interested in trying to decrease suffering in the world in this area for a long time. And then when I found DBT, it was such an obvious fit from the research. But then when I learned more about it, it was so, I don't know, it just all resonated with me so much. It made so much sense. So that's how I got connected to it.
So you've taken some DBT, like you've done some DBT work as a client as well, or just like self-teaching through your education?
Self-teaching through my education.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. I mean, I feel like most of us go into psychology for a reason, and that's usually part of the reason. It's just like, who am I? What can I do to survive this world?
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so that's amazing. What school did you go to?
Rutgers University in New Jersey.
Cool. Awesome. So you, via email, we chatted just a little bit about your story. And so I'm very curious, you had a heart attack and you're very young. Mm-hmm. Obviously that does not discriminate, but I'm curious, like because I have cardiac issues as well. And I was just curious, like what happened and how did DBT kind of help you work through that?
Yeah. So I am 36 now. And at the time of my heart attack, I was 29. So I was in the last year of my graduate school program. I was an internship, which is the final year of education for a PhD in clinical psych. And I was working at Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx at the time. And I had left internship that day and went out to do a workout class with one of my friends, and all of a sudden just couldn't breathe. I felt like I had a metal bar wrapped around my chest and had all of the very stereotypical symptoms of a heart attack. And I say that in terms of what's stereotypical for men, like kind of like the vision, the vision you see in media of like someone clutching their chest. Like I couldn't lift my arms. Exactly.
Yeah, this is exactly what happened to me, and they thought I had heart attack too. And I was like, I know women experience things differently, but like I couldn't move my shoulders. My whole left arm was just like gone. It's so weird.
It's so weird. Yeah. It's terrifying. And
very.
Yeah. And at first I thought I was having a panic attack. So I went out into the hallway during the workout class, and I like slid down the wall and sat on the floor just trying to catch my breath. And I'm so grateful to have the training I have, because I was sitting on the floor doing paced breathing, which is a skill from DBT, and none of my symptoms changed. And I was like, oh, this is not a panic attack.
This is literally exactly what happened to me. This is wild. Okay. Because I was like, I've had panic attacks forever. So I just was like, oh, it's okay. I'm just going to do all my things. I did the tip skill. I did the breathing. I did the whatever. And then I was like, why isn't this changing? This is like the first time that I've not had any ability to change even a little bit. Obviously, I can't just like wish my way out of a panic attack, but it's scary when your skills don't work and you know the skills.
So scary. And for people listening right now, like if you're worried, go to ER. If you feel like you're having chest pain, shortness of breath, all of that. And what I will say is when I share this with folks who have struggled with panic attacks before, they'll say, like, what? Everything you're describing sounds exactly like a panic attack. How am I supposed to tell the difference? And maybe you can speak to this too, but I've heard people say there's a really distinct difference between the panic attack and heart attack and cardiac problems. So just so folks are aware for their own anxiety, if something new comes up, go to the doctor, go to the ER, but then kind of use your skills and see how you respond to it if you're not. But it's terrifying. I went to the hospital. In the ambulance, they said, oh, you're having a heart attack. And from there, I had to get surgery. Short of it is I had a hole in my heart that I didn't know I had, that I was born with a hole in my heart. And I had a blood clot in my calf. It's called a DBT that had broken off and went through the hole in my heart and caused the attack. Very, very rare, very, very uncommon, not only for a 29-year-old, but in general. So I will say that.
Although the blood clots in the leg are not that uncommon for women.
Not that uncommon.
In their 30s. Yeah. Very scary.
Yes. And so I was a little young at the time, but it was related to hormonal birth control, estrogen-based birth control, which is a significant risk factor for that. So
totally.
So when was your heart thing?
Last year, and it was so similar.
Oh gosh.
So I was traveling, of course, because nothing is going to work when it's supposed to. And very similar thing. I've had panic attacks my whole life. Well, so this is the thing. Have I had panic attacks my whole life, or have I had a cardiac issue my whole life? And doctors just didn't, because I've been to the emergency room not a million times, dozens of times for heart issues. And I've had cardiologists talking to me and stuff. And they're like, you're having a panic attack. You're having a panic attack. And then so then I was in Calgary, which is like an hour flight away from home. And coming out of an Airbnb, my husband was with me. I was with my best friend. And I was like, oh, I'm having a panic attack. I'm just going to lay down for a second, do some breathing. It's cold as hell in Calgary. So I took snow, put it on my wrists, put it on my neck, did all the things, drank water, all of it. And I was like, this is bizarre. It's not getting better. And it took me like an hour and a half for me to start being like, okay, now I like my chest like that. I've never heard that description of like being wrapped with like metal, but that totally is what it felt like. My chest was so tight. And then it started going down my arm. And I was like, okay, this is different. The skills aren't working. I'm doing everything I can. Went in, my troponin levels were too high. And they were like, oh, that's gotta be a fluke. Like whatever. So then they did it. So they're like, this shows you might have had a heart attack, but like, I'm pretty sure it's just like a false positive. We'll just like wait. And then so they did it again, and he came in and he sat down, and I was like, oh shit. He was like, so your troponin levels are like elevating pretty high. And so for people who don't know, I mean, you might be able to describe this better, but like troponin levels, there's something in your heart that only stays in your heart unless there's been like significant heart damage, and then it goes into your bloodstream. So if they can detect it in your bloodstream, it often means there's a heart attack, but not always. So it turned out that it wasn't a heart attack, but I was in the hospital for a week because they couldn't figure out what had happened. And it was a SVT, like I can't even say it. It's basically my heart races like crazy. And it had just raced so bad that it caused heart damage because I didn't go in. And the crazy thing is I've had these racing heart issues since I was 9. And I thought it was panic attacks. So now it's like, do I have panic attacks? Like, was this one just particularly worse than another? So it's very, very strange, but I love to hear, like, I love your experience with it. Obviously not that you had a heart attack, but that we both did the same thing. Immediately go, I'm going to just do my skills and it's going to be okay. And that was the big moment for me of, I was like,
that's not working.
Not that skills work every time, but skills should work over the course of an hour. Panic attacks also don't last for an hour.
Yes, no.
Right? Panic attacks should like peak in 10 minutes and be back down. So if you're 100%. Doing the right things and it's still an hour later and you're like, I don't know, that's a sign you got to go in.
Yeah. And so I'm so sorry you had that experience. And
you too.
Yeah. And like these symptoms, the chest pain, the shortness of breath, they are symptoms of panic attacks, right? And what I want, like what feels so relevant for both you and I, based on what you're sharing about your experience, is women and people assigned female at birth are also shunned in emergency room. They're told, oh, you're having a panic attack. Oh, it's not really that bad. Oh, go home. You don't need help. So there's really, really repetitive and common systemic like downplaying of symptoms. And that's not just heart attacks, right? That's pain. That's all sorts of anxiety symptoms. Yeah. All the stuff, all the things.
Mental
which is
health,
why
anything.
Right. True.
I can't think of any medical issue where I would rather go to the doctor as a woman and be treated well. You know, I mean, I guess if you were pregnant, maybe, but like even that, they discredit people for that, like for stuff like that all the time too. It's
100%. And obviously, I don't know your identity, but we're both white appearing, and that is so helpful too in terms of just being taken seriously. And there's this consistent invalidation of women of all colors, races, classes, of not knowing your body or being told you don't know your body, and then not being taken seriously and then coming under harm because of that. So I don't know if this resonates with you, but beyond the paced breathing and all of the like anxiety coping skills, both during the tech itself and in the hospital, I also was very, very grateful to have the assertiveness skills, the mindfulness skills, the distraction skills, like all of the distress tolerance of getting through this difficult time when I'm just waiting for information and answers. It's,
I don't know without skills. I mean, I strongly believe that without skills, I wouldn't be here, period. Right. Just given when I learned them and the point in my life that I was at, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. But to get through so many situations, you know, it's there's nothing like it to be able to come in with this toolkit of like, at least I can help like diminish the distress that's going to come from whatever situation. And it's funny actually in the cards that you created, which are beautiful, there's in the front of the cards, there's this like the little book, like a little kind of like how to use the cards book. And I love that you have in there that you could take all of these cards, because each card is like a different skill or a different component of skills, and put them on your floor and come up with a cope ahead plan. I was like, that is brilliant. Did you just like think of that on your own, or was that like, did you see that somewhere?
I did. No, thank you. When I thought of like,
Amazing.
what's the utility of the cards outside of the workbook or the handbook? It was very obvious to me, like, oh, they're movable pieces. Like, can you put it out and see everything in front of you? I personally benefit from like writing out coping plans for sure. Like in my distress tolerance kit, etc. But then to have the concrete things you can bring with you, yeah, no, that was my idea.
Yeah.
Thank you. Glad you like it.
Totally. No, it's brilliant. I was so excited because even if you were to have, I think you also say in there, like you could bring like a few of the cards with you as reminders for a specific situation, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you were in the hospital and you were like, I just can't deal with the amount of noise or like the smells or the whatever, you could just have somebody bring you the cards and it would be like, here's the 5 things I'm going to do to like try and self-soothe in a really shitty situation.
100%. My gosh, I have such a visceral reaction thinking about the sensory nightmare that is the hospital.
Awful.
But yeah, awful.
Yeah.
The one that the only one that I've used myself since making the deck is I have a card. I don't know which one it is, but it's now I forget what I call it, but it's like mantras against people pleasing, essentially.
Okay.
There's like statements to remember about interpersonal effectiveness, and you can like balance self-respect with other respect. And I bring that with me for hard conversations sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like talk about like the dear man skill as like a skill that everybody should know.
Oh,
Just to be able to have a framework for how to have a difficult conversation to get. I always say this. I hate the like get what you want language that Marcia uses because of the like manipulation stigma about people with borderline. It feels like it's almost a manipulation tool, which it's not. But anyways, I just have personal weirdness with that. But to have a tool to be able to like have a more effective conversation that realistically benefits everyone. Because if you think about the reinforce component of DEAR, it's about making it better for everyone. I just love
100%. Yeah, assertiveness. The reinforce. I've often had folks have that same reaction about feeling like it's manipulation for the reinforce the R skill, and I always say, like, yes, and we're all manipulating each other all of the time. And that we're all influencing one another all of the time. And at the end of the day, in order to quote unquote manipulate somebody, you have to be considering them. You have to be thinking about them. And so if you're not going in with, malintent, it actually makes you more connected with that person, trying to consider it from their point of view. Like, what is nice for them in this situation? What would they like to get out of this? How can we both feel happy on the other side of this? So yeah, it's being able to communicate your needs allows people who care for you to give you what you need and what you want. So yeah, bidirectionally helpful assertiveness skills for sure.
Absolutely. What has the reception been? Like you said, you don't really do as much clinical work anymore. That must be in itself a huge shift because you go into this profession mostly to do clinical work. What has that been like? Any like learnings or feedback that you've gotten from people?
Yeah. Any feedback I've gotten from people about the
just
cards?
About the resources or any of your resources that you've developed or what you're doing on socials or anything like that.
I see. Yeah. So what I will say is I loved being a therapist. I miss my clients, and I needed to take a break, a sabbatical for like personal reasons, essentially. And then I liked it for various reasons, or it helped my health in various ways. And not being in the clinical space allowed me to dedicate more time and energy to these other resources like the book and writing and video making, and also working for consulting for other people, including, for example, the suicide prevention nonprofit Now Matters Now, trying to get the word out and get these skills out and help out at like a much larger level. One of my colleagues, Dr. Regine Galanti, she specializes in CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, not DBT, but she's also on social media. And she talks about how she can make a video, and then even if only 100 people see it, she just taught 100 people a skill. When each week she sees fewer than 100 people as a clinician. And she's absolutely right. And she's been very helpful for like grounding me in that truth of some of my videos. So my most popular platform is TikTok, I would say. And some
Okay.
of my videos have millions of views, and it's kind of boggling, mind-boggling.
Yeah. You're like,
So,
is there are this many people out there? Like, oh my God.
seriously. And like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like this many people want to learn about validation, or
Yeah.
which is amazing in today's world with all the polarization too. I am thrilled about teaching people validation. So
Yep. Or
it's
any
been,
coping skill.
or any coping
Given
skill.
we're going to need them. That's not going to be.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have any by now, yeah, I feel sad for you.
Yeah.
Oof. So yeah, I think that being able to dedicate my time to this dissemination piece has been incredibly rewarding in ways I didn't really anticipate. Although I might go back to clinical work, I do miss it.
And you can do both, right? You could do like a little bit of each, and that's the joy of doing your own thing, is you don't have to fit into whatever mold. I mean, doing comprehensive DBT, I'm not a clinician. I am always in awe at how I know that the phone consultations don't happen all that often, but even the fact that they could, especially if you're like, I know you don't have borderline personality disorder, but like you identify as a super feeler, right? Like,
yes,
that is a lot to like ride on you and your emotional state, I would say. In just like, sometimes you get calls, or I mean, I get like Instagram messages, I'm sure you do too, of people in distress, and it just kind of like, oh, it sits with me more than I would want it to.
Yeah, 100%. That is one of the main tensions. I didn't appreciate how much it sat on my soul, if you will, even if I wasn't getting calls, until I was no longer on call. And it's a huge tension, because my clients, I always wish they would call me more than they did. So FYI, all you people out there who are in DBT, your therapist really means it. Like, call them. They want you to call, because phone coaching is so helpful and so rewarding.
I can't imagine.
Oh my God. Yeah, both ways. And it is tiring. And I think there's, I was talking to another colleague recently about how it's possible that DBT has an ableism problem. Like,
okay, let's talk about that.
It definitely does from a client perspective. And there are folks in the field being very, very direct and, I want to say aggressive, but they're just out there in a good way of working to make DBT more neuroaffirmative for autistic and folks and ADHDers, for example.
Yeah.
There's also folks trying to make resources available to deaf people, to folks with vision differences, kind of getting skills out in different mediums, right? Cool. But the thing that my colleague and I were talking about is like the 24/7 is really hard for anybody, any clinician who has chronic health issues or is a super feeler, or maybe has bipolar disorder and needs their 8 hours of sleep. Yeah. So there's something there that I'm thinking that the field, so my colleague is a DBT clinician as well. So I'm thinking maybe people will be starting to talk about this and we might see some changes. But right now, comprehensive DBT, as proved in the research, is 24/7 phone coaching. Yep. So we got to figure it out.
Yeah. And I mean, what a resource. Like, to be able to have that is incredible. It's just, is it sustainable for clinicians? Is it sustainable for systems? I work in like health administration. So at a systems level, that's hard to set up in a way that's sustainable and doesn't burn people out.
Yeah. And that's a huge part of team and why team is so helpful. Yes. And teammates can step in and cover phone coaching for people. And I used that when I was on a team. But you know that your colleagues are struggling too, potentially, or you don't want to ask too much, or I don't know. So this is a thing I think individuals and teams are going to have to figure out.
For sure. I don't think there's an easy solution to that, but I'm glad that there's work being done. And like you were saying about, people with ADHD or just anybody neurodiverse, when I used to work, like I used to do some research stuff around BPD, and my whole undergrad, I basically spent doing every single paper I could about BPD and DBT just to kind of like really solidify myself and ground myself in the research. And that was a long time ago now, like 8-9 years ago. But there was also a lot of quite like straight up discriminatory seeming policies in some of the research around like, you can't have cognitive disabilities to learn DBT because it's too complicated. And I'm like, is that a is that a person problem or a DBT problem? Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like some of these
Mm-hmm.
skills they don't have to be that complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also assuming that people can't learn or they don't deserve the ability to learn these skills, right? Like we should be modifying for them. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of cool things like, social media use, like various different, like more visual resources. I mean, I know I've heard so many good things about the neurodiverse book of DBT, the little workbook, beautiful book.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of thing, just to have colors.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Marcia, love the woman, but no color, no image, just text on text on text. And it's like, that doesn't make me want to learn a skill, you know?
Yeah, I do. And I think you're speaking to the fact that the original manual is amazing and
Yeah,
very
that's
word
what I
heavy
used.
and
It's
yeah,
amazing, but
and
yeah.
very intellectual. It's like how I learned, right? And I think that's Marcia's style, and that's okay. Like everyone learns differently, right? But I think that I've often heard the handbook without a therapist is very hard to learn from. And that's why I and other folks have written workbooks. And I know that Diana's book has with so many
Yeah.
images, right? DBT for life.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. There's also like a DBT art therapy book. If you're
Oh,
interested,
I
I can
haven't
try
seen
to,
that one.
we can email about it. I'm forgetting the name and
Please,
maybe even
yeah.
put it in show notes or something
I would
because I'm
love to.
blanking. And I know there's another book coming out by Shreen Rizvi and Jesse Finkelstein that's supposed to have more.
They're the ones who did the game of real life, right? Which I also love.
Yes,
So
yes.
cool.
And
Yeah.
the videos, the amazing DBT
I haven't seen the videos.
Oh my goodness. So youtube.com/DBTRU. So this is the Rutgers University lab I worked at. They have shorts, animated videos of the skills. Yes.
Oh my God. So cool. Okay. Well, I want you to connect me to them because I love the game of real life. That was like the first DBT resource that I found that was visual and unique.
Yeah.
And so I bought it. Like I was on their Kickstarter when they first had it, like bought it right away. And I just think it's so important to like have like a gamified DBT skills. Like, oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love it too. Yeah. Jesse's incredible.
Yeah.
Love him and everything he does. But yeah, there are some resources out there, including, and then the videos are fabulous.
Yeah.
That make these skills, like my cards, they're all under 150 words because I'm used to talking about these skills in 90 seconds or less for social media. But in the skills book, it's paragraphs for each skill, right? So it definitely is a different skill set as a clinician to learn how to teach these to people at various levels. And I'm glad people are starting to do it for sure.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be complicated. Like we've been doing this series where we've kind of used Diana's book as a guide. And even though I've been kind of immersed in this world for 10 years, I've just through the conversation alone in our skills series, I hear about somebody else talking about a skill and then somebody else, and I go, oh, I've never made that connection before. And it's just different ways of learning that I'm so glad are supported now. And to be honest, this is my own like bias. I didn't even think about, people who are like hearing impaired or vision impaired. Like how do you navigate learning these skills? And my fear is that they probably aren't given very many opportunities to learn these skills because it's just too complicated for the systems to manage.
Yeah, there are not a lot of resources. There's limited research in both of those areas, and then some resources, but not many for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I know we talked a little bit over email. You're part of the queer community, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about what that kind of has meant to you in this DBT space and anything relevant?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so much there, but maybe the way that these initially got connected for me is my research area in grad school was specifically looking at suicide and self-harm in queer folks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. And specifically, I looked at the ways that what we call minority stress, so discrimination and oppression against LGBTQ folks, how that influences or predicts whether someone has mental health difficulties and specifically self-harm. And spoiler alert, they do. And I think, and so I think that the way that this relates to DBT is it's very in line with the biosocial model of DBT, which is the theory that we use to understand how someone comes to have difficulties with emotions, right? Because super feelers, people who feel things intensely, don't necessarily have mental health struggles, right? There's a difference between feeling intensely and feeling passionately and feeling pain and joy.
Thing.
Yeah. Versus struggling with self-harm or substance abuse or eating disorders or depression and all of these things. Of course, being a super feeler makes those things more likely, but they're not exactly an overlapped Venn diagram, right? And the way that DBT understands this is through what we call chronic invalidation, that if a super feeler, for example, grows up in an environment that is consistently communicating to them that their internal experiences don't make sense, right? They're too much, they're crazy, they feel things, they're weird, whatever that is, that's what leads to those mental health difficulties. So
and also leads to your self-invalidation, because that's all you've learned. And then that is just like such a vicious cycle.
Yes. Thank you so much for adding that, because that's very relevant for queer people. Research is starting to show that discrimination and oppression is a form of chronic invalidation. And so queer people who grow up in queer stigmatizing societies, cultures, families will self-invalidate, will self-stigmatize and view themselves negatively, have shame, difficulty with anxiety. And then also we'll consistently struggle with that kind of anxiety about being queer and how to interact with the world. And so DBT is such a beautiful thing for understanding why queer people have higher rates of mental health difficulties in a way that has nothing to do with being queer, right? It's the way that they're living.
They're being treated. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then I love DBT because of the dialectics. I think it's so relevant and so powerful for queer people who maybe have identities outside the binary, who are constantly changing and questioning identities, or maybe not, right? But recognizing this change is constant and being able to self-validate and be effective within a world that is stigmatizing you. DBT offers so many skills for it. It's such a beautiful gift for queer folks. So yeah, I love that connection.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I feel like in our Super Feelers Club, like our peer support, I would say at least 50% of people identify as queer, if not more. And that's just, I think, finding a safe community and then sticking with it is really important. But also, I just feel like, there's a lot of correlation between people's invalidating experiences and how they're treated in the world and not having the supports. I mean, also the discrimination of you don't necessarily get the supports in the health system because you don't trust the health system for being safe for you to go to.
100%.
Which is also very fair.
Yeah. And you either don't go or you don't tell your doctor what your identity is or who you're dating or who you're sleeping with because of the discrimination. So, and that negatively impacts you for sure. It's
getting so much worse. Terrifying.
It's terrifying. Like my research is so in this area, and everyone's research is unequivocal that systemic level discrimination, like laws, anti-trans laws, and executive orders that say you don't exist, have a direct impact on trans queer people's mental health. Negative. So it is not? Of course.
Right? Like, I mean, it's like truly, it's like how if the government is trying to systematically just pretend that you don't exist, that is the ultimate level of invalidation.
Exactly.
I have goosebumps. It's very upsetting. And I live in Canada. I'm cisgendered. I'm straight. I'm so privileged. And I just, my heart breaks for every single person because like, why, like, just let people be people. Anyways, this is not a political podcast. I think everybody listening to this podcast is on the exact same, side of all of this. But it's just, we're going to see the impacts of this for decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
In so many ways.
The research shows us this. So like you said, like on face level, we can imagine that and it makes sense, right? But the research is pretty unequivocal about it. So not even to be political, but that we know this.
Yeah. And the existence of people shouldn't be political either. But
also that.
Here we are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a queer and non-binary person, it's been really tough, obviously, but I've been really grateful for the DBT skills again. Mm-hmm. But we brought it up from the emails because I'm writing a book right now, and it's about DBT for LGBTQ people, and it's been really hard where you're talking about, or I'm talking about, using these skills to, like feel better, and yet like the world is. Oh, I was about to be judgmental. I was about to say the world is a dumpster fire, which is a judgment and not helpful.
It is, but I mean, first of all, I love judging. That is the one DBT skill that I'm not good at all. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of DBT skills I'm not good at, but that's the one DBT skill I'm not even trying to be good at. But I don't know. That seems pretty. I don't know. Is that judgment or is that fact? It's hard. It's hard to know.
I would say. So for those who don't know, like maybe we can teach like non-judgmental a little bit right now, right? Dumpster fire, I would say it's a judgment because it's standing in for like, what do we mean by a dumpster fire? And I think it's a good example of when you behaviorally describe what you're talking about, it doesn't actually change the emotional impact very much, right? Where there's the polarization, there's these executive orders and laws, there's the tariffs. Like I'm sure, like you're very aware as I am.
Very aware. As a Canadian, we are hyper aware at the moment. Yep.
Yeah, and so much discord, right? Like so much conflict, and it's very stressful for most people. Like that is clear from the news. So these are all facts that are describing dumpster fire. Yeah. And all of these things, like I still feel very intensely when I talk about it without using the word dumpster fire, right?
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about non-judgmental that I like so much is if we were trying to have a real conversation about politics right now or trying to problem solve things, we would not be able to problem solve dumpster fire, but we can problem solve each of those other things. So that's the beauty of non-judgmental, I think, and the power of it.
I've never heard it described that way. I really like that. I really appreciate that. Still not good at it. But that's the thing is, I mean, you can hear 20 different people, therapists, influencers, whatever, people with lived experience describing how they interpret or use a DBT skill, and one day something different is going to connect.
Yeah.
We just had a episode come out like a month ago about radical acceptance, and one of the Dave, who's been on the series, and he's like an original member of the Super Feelers Club. He described it as the reframe of radical reality as instead of radical acceptance, and it's stuck with so many of us. Just as like the word acceptance is so hard for people, that reframe just made such a big difference for everybody. And that's one of my favorite DBT skills. And even the reframe for me was so beneficial. Which is, I think, what's so cool about like just all of these unique resources and like tailored resources to different learning styles. I can't imagine what Marsha is thinking, just in terms of like, wow, I'm sure she never imagined all of these things coming out of a therapy program.
Yeah, I have met her, but I do not know her. And I have to imagine she's thrilled. Yeah. All of her academic children have gone off and had academic grandchildren, of which I am one, and are doing these amazing things, getting her work out there. And even if it's slightly different than what she did, I think there's still a lot of holding on to the foundations of dialectical principles and evidence-based coping skills. So, yeah.
Very much so. I actually feel like this is probably one of the therapies that is still the most grounded in the like original. I was reading her original text from 93 recently, and there's, other than the fact that I have like some challenges with the comprehensive DBT program and how she's so adamant that it has to be comprehensive because that's just not realistic. There's, most of it is still very much like how it's done or considered today, and is still valid and not as stigmatizing as I would have thought it would have been from a book from 31 years ago, which is very good to see.
100%. And I also think she was ahead of her time in the things we're talking about a lot today of like the isms, right?
Yes.
Like she was not aware of ableism, but she talks about sexism specifically.
Yeah.
And talks about culture and how humans do not live in a vacuum, and that you need dialectics there for creating independence and like fostering dependence and interdependence healthily to help people grow within systems that are not designed to help them. So I do appreciate her dialectical viewpoints there.
Yeah, and I think that comes from the lived experience that obviously when she wrote those texts she hadn't talked about, but when you have that deep lived experience, you can still stigmatize, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot harder to do so when you are one of the people that you're talking about. Oh, that's such a cool story. So I'm wondering, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you were really hoping to talk about?
I don't think so. From my memory of the things we talked about beforehand, this has been really nice, even hearing about your experience with your heart issues. And I mean, I'm not surprised because everyone who I know knows the DBT skills, finds them useful for the hardest parts of life. So that they helped you there too. Yeah, I'm not surprised. But yeah, no, I don't think so.
Okay. So a couple questions then, just to kind of wrap us up. So the first one is, you're writing this book about DBT specifically for the LGBTQ community. What, do you have an idea of when that's going to come out? Like, is that something imminent?
Unfortunately, not until next year.
Okay.
But right now,
when it happens, you let me know.
Yeah. The timeline is Pride Month, actually, June 2026. So that's pretty fun if it stays there. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, you'll have to come on and we can chat about it and do a little book launchy thing.
Great.
That's so fun. You also have your workbook, which I don't have yet, but I know it's on the way. And then the cards. Are there any other things that you wanted to kind of chat about? You like your TikTok, and I don't have TikTok. I feel like I'm too, like, I'm not even old, but I feel too old for TikTok.
Yeah. That's a great question. So what I will say for folks, because there's so many workbooks out there, that mine is text. There's no images the way we've talked about. It is meant to be like really broken down and to run through without a therapist. And this isn't to replace DBT, but it's so folks who don't have access to a DBT therapist can still really walk through in a really concrete way DBT skills and learn and practice them. And then the only other resource I'll mention is, I mentioned Now Matters Now, which is that nonprofit I work for. And I do encourage folks to check them out. Their kind of spin on DBT skills and mental health resources is all about lived experience. So on the website, they teach a lot of DBT skills, but then also folks provide stories about how the skills have helped them personally in their lives, and like what it looks like for them in real life to practice, because it's very different off of the page. They also have these meetings for peer support, essentially, that if folks are looking for resources, Now Matters Now is really nice for those things as well.
Amazing. I will put them in the notes because any resource like that is so beneficial. And, you know, it's funny. I think in some advocacy spaces, there's like a competition aspect of it. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I've noticed some things in mental health advocacy over the years. And I'm like, no, let's just get the resources out to people. Who cares? Like, because one thing's going to resonate with one person, something else is going to resonate with somebody else. Let's just put everything out there and see what sticks for people.
Exactly. Right. Like, I have no problem talking so explicitly about Jesse's cards and Diana's book because they are different. Right. And so definitely encourage folks to like check them all out and see what resonates. But at the end of the day, it's about finding the person who writes or speaks or communicates in the way that resonates with you, so you can get a handle on these things, because they're not easy to get a handle on, but worth the struggle. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't need to be an expert in every single skill. I know the ones that work for me, and I'm willing to think about others. But sometimes it's just like, nah, I can't do that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
love.
think the game changer, again, like for me, but also plenty of my clients, is exactly what you just said. Realizing like, oh, I don't have to remember every single skill because some of them just might not be for you, or at least not right now,
Yeah.
right? And so
And
focus.
that's the not right now. Yeah, totally.
And that's okay.
That's the cool part.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many skills where when I first learned them, I needed radical acceptance. I needed distress tolerance, whatever. And then, 10 years later, I use opposite action all the time. I think about please all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The tip skill has been huge for me. And without super feelers that I, interact with in the peer support group, I wouldn't have remembered to try those ones again. I probably use opposite action like 6 times a week. It wasn't even on my radar until we started having these conversations, which it's just it's so nice that they can kind of come back in your life and be like, oh, now you're good with the radical acceptance bit for the whatever situation is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this other one and see if it can help change things.
I love that. I had my own experience like that when over the past few years since not being in therapy, when I would come back to the skills and I rediscovered skillful means, the form of wise mind that no one talks about.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I could even tell you what that's about.
Yeah. So the balance of being mind and doing mind, it's really, really helpful for how can we be problem solving and goal focused and live life and do things while also be here now and do nothing. And that is okay. Rest, essentially.
Yeah. Which I think for so many of us is very difficult.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Honestly, I don't know if there's evidence around this in the research, but I always think that is because we've been told that we're not enough for so long that we need to prove that we're extra and just be as productive and hardworking as humanly possible, which is at a detriment to ourselves. And I struggle with workaholism, and that will forever be a struggle of mine, I think, but it's an important one to remember that rest is productive too.
100%. Rest is Resistance is a book I would recommend. Trisha Hersey, if you haven't read it. And then also Laziness Does Not Exist.
I have not read that either.
That is maybe that one even more so, by Dr. Devon Price.
Okay.
It's incredible. Both of them are lovely.
Okay, amazing. I hope they have audiobooks because I am very bad at reading.
I would very much bet both of them would make audiobooks for accessibility reasons. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, amazing. I love that. Okay, my final question is, what do you love the most about being a super feeler?
Oh my gosh. Is this a cop-out to say just I love feeling things deeply? I love crying at my favorite TV shows, and I love feeling joy when my partner shares good news. I love seeing my friends and being overwhelmed with the happiness of connecting with them. I love feeling things deeply just in terms of being here in this body right now.
Beautiful. That is the opposite of a cop-out. That's a perfect answer. I love that.
Because it's inherent in the definition, but yeah.
I know. No, but it's true. And everybody has a different answer to the question, which is the best part. It's why I end every episode with that question, because I think it's so important. Thank you so much for that and for this whole conversation. I just realized we're also both speaking at an event on BPD Awareness Day with the Borderline Personality Disorder Society of BC.
Yes.
So I will also link that in the notes. I think you might be speaking right after me, or 2 people after me. So it's cool. A whole half day of awesome speakers about borderline and DBT. So
yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'm talking about DBT for LGBTQ people, pretty in depth. Yes. So if folks are interested in that, definitely come watch.
Totally. Amazing. It'll be so fun. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kiki. This has been a blast, and I'm so glad that we finally connected.
Yeah, me too.
I'll link all of your stuff in the notes, and hopefully we'll chat soon, at least on May 8th.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, and see you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Super Feeler podcast. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded territory of the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations. If you'd like to learn more about the Super Feeler podcast, share your story, or participate in the Super Feelers Club, which is our peer support group, it's totally free, virtual, and open to anyone who experiences intense emotions or has borderline personality disorder, please check out the link in our show notes or go to laurieedmondson.com. If you would like to support the show, we would very much appreciate it. There's an option to do monthly small donations at whatever denomination you'd like, and you get bonus content, extra resources, and extra connection to me throughout. That can be found on patreon.com/superfeeler, or again in the notes below. Thanks again, and have a great day.